Ultimate abilities are hands down the most impactful spells in the game, but what if we told you that you've been handicapping yourself by using certain ultimates wrong this entire time? Well, that won't be happening any longer, because in today's video, we'll be breaking down 10 ultimate abilities that are often used incorrectly and showing you guys the optimal ways of using them. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. Akshan's ultimate is a pretty straightforward one for the most part, but there is a super unique combo that you can use to really express your skill with the champ. Oftentimes, Akshan players will just use their ultimate and walk around while it's charging, but did you know you can actually use E at the same time? What can be really annoying a lot of the time is when you use your ultimate and an enemy just walks out in front to block it. In this clip here, we can see the Akshan player targeting the volley bear with his ultimate, but we can also notice that Kai'Sa may be coming in to block. In this case, the Akshan could have used his E upwards to guarantee that all the shots land on the volley bear. This next clip is a perfect example of how you can optimally combo Akshan R with his E. Akshan locks onto volley bear, but then begins to notice that Pantheon and Kai'Sa may be coming in for a block. He then uses his E on terrain to help reposition and give himself a better shot at landing all of his ult bullets on the volley bear. In all honesty, using this combo will take you a bunch of games to get used to, but it's one of the most satisfying combos to pull off when you can do it consistently. Next up is a champion who in theory should have a pretty easy ultimate, but there are so many players that use Alistar's R incorrectly. One way that Alistar players can grief with their R is by using it when it's completely unnecessary. Before jumping into a skirmish, you really gotta analyze the fight and think about whether or not your R is needed. In this example right here, we have Alistar diving in on a Xerath who just wasted her ultimate and an ADC Senna who's only level 5. We also have a Rumble on the way as well, so it's going to be a 3v2. With Xerath and Senna already using their abilities, there's no reason for Alistar to pop his ultimate here. There's no damage threat, and therefore it's just a complete waste. Wasting Alistar R like this can come back to bite you extremely hard, especially when you're looking to snowball early on. If Alistar had held on to his R here, the next time Xerath and Senna came back to lane, he'd be able to threaten a dive play very easily, but now that's out of the cards. The massive late game mistake that many Alistar players make is just holding on to their ultimate for too long. Oftentimes, newer Alistar players will only use their ultimate once they drop low on health, but this is completely backwards. When diving into a team fight, you want to be using your R earlier than later while you're still very healthy, so that the enemy has way more health to chew through to take you down. Here, we can see Alistar is planning to engage, but he just waits so long to pop his R, and by the time he does so, he's basically already dead. The failed flash is just the cherry on top as well. In this situation, Alistar should have used his R before flashing in, so that he could soak more damage. Here's a great example of an optimal Alistar R usage. Alistar notices that the enemy Xerath is looking to walk back to tower, so he pops his R before even going in while on full HP in order to soak as many tower shots as possible. Especially when you're going for these dive plays and will be taking turret aggro, having that R popped immediately so that you can take the least amount of damage from the tower is very key. Caitlyn's ultimate is generally used as a finisher when the enemy drops into lethal range, but it's actually best used as an opener in many situations. What a lot of Caitlyn players don't think about is how using her ultimate when the enemy is on full health to simply draw priority is a really great play. In this clip here, Dragon is spawning very soon, and Caitlyn is getting priority over the mid wave while Zeri chills under tower. Using Caitlyn R on Zeri here, who has no lifesteal, is extremely worth it, especially in this game where her team has a Rengar and a Fizz. Dropping Zeri's health bar will mean she has to play a bit safer in the upcoming fight, as she'll be a very easy one-shot target. Instead, what happens is Zeri gets to play the fight out on full health, so she's in no danger at all of dying to the Rengar or Renekton. This next clip here is a great example of a good usage of Caitlyn R when the enemy is full health. A teamfight breaks out and Caitlyn's team ends up winning. As Zeri is retreating, Caitlyn then uses R even though Zeri is full health to deter Zeri from trying to re-enter a fight to take out the low health Rek'Sai. Cait R in the mid game is also on a very short cooldown, so since the entire enemy team just died, it's going to be back up again before another fight breaks out due to the longer death timers. So all in all, Cait R can be very impactful, not only to get the finishing blow on kills, but to prevent the enemy from easily contesting objectives in the mid to late game. Cho'gath's ultimate not only deals a ton of damage, but it provides him with bonus health if it lands the killing blow. When you're playing team fights in the late game with Cho'gath, a lot of players will tunnel way too hard on the stacking aspect of Cho'gath's R, trying to get that last hit instead of just using it for the burst. In this clip here, we can see how Cho'gath is trying to wait until Ezreal drops into range to where he can chomp him for the stacks, but he should be way more focused on just using R whenever possible, especially when your teammates have follow-up damage coming in like this Brand, and if the enemy has a gap close like Ezreal, do not try and hold on to your R for the stack. Instead of auto-attacking the Ezreal here, Cho'gath should have just used his ultimate, as with the follow-up damage from Brand, Ezreal would have been 100% dead there. Imagine if Elder Dragon is up right now, and Ezreal ends up being able to base and come back in for the Elder fight. These kinds of plays can be absolutely game-changing, and holding on to your Cho'gath ultimate for the execute because you want one extra stack 35 minutes into the game is just not optimal in most cases. It would make a little more sense if Cho'gath R was actually an execute to where it dealt more damage the lower health the enemy is, but it's not like that. It deals the same amount of damage no matter what health the enemy is sitting at. Heimerdinger is a very unique champion because he actually has 3 different ultimate abilities to choose from. This can make things a bit complicated, but let's try to narrow things down so that you're using the correct R most of the time. RW is the one that you're most likely going to be using the least on Heimerdinger, but it has its moments. Best time to use RW is when the enemy is already CC'd and you're guaranteed to line up the spell. In this clip here, we see the Varus root the Lucian, which would have been a perfect time for Heimer to follow with RW. Instead, Heimer uses RQ, walks up into melee range, gets easily taken out, and the Lucian just barely dies due to a nice snipe from Varus Q. Heimer could have just sat back at a safe range, bursted the Lucian out with RW, and everything would have been so much smoother. RE is going to be most optimal when you're looking for a catch play on an enemy. In this clip here, Heimer's team is really strong, but they just can't quite get in range. A nice RE would have been perfect here to stun up the Syndra and allow the Varus and Bel'Veth to get in range to take her out. Even when the Lucian dashes right in, an RE would have been great there to stun him up, but instead Heimer throws down a pretty useless RQ. So lastly for RQ, this one is going to be most optimal against heavy melee dive comps. Into a full-on melee enemy composition, using that RQ in a team fight can be super impactful. Here's an example of a great RQ situation. The Vi and Pyke are looking to dive right in on the Varus, so by throwing down RQ, you can use the slow from the ability to help kite away, and it will deal a ton of damage while the enemies are up in melee range. Everything ends up working out here, but as soon as the Vi locked onto Varus with her R, Heimer should have had that RQ down immediately. It was definitely a bit delayed here, so don't hesitate to throw it down once you see the enemy is committed to diving in. With Jhin's ultimate, it's oftentimes best used to find picks on targets that are longer range away, or to finish off enemies that escape your auto range. Another way to use Jhin's ultimate, though, that we don't see used that often at all, is to apply pressure in lane when the enemy is farming under tower. If there's a dragon coming up soon that you want to contest, or in this case, if you're playing with a support with strong dive like Nautilus, softening the enemy up so that they're an easier dive target is a great way to use Jhin R. This clip here is a perfect example of using Jhin R for pressure, as Aphelios and Janna are both half health under tower, and Jhin uses his R just for poke. By no means is Jhin looking to kill with this R, which is the big takeaway. Many Jhin players will only use their ultimate if they think they can kill, but especially early on in lane like this, and on a cannon wave as well, it's really great to use. Janna even ends up using her R just for the heal here, so this now means that a dive play where Jhin's jungler makes his way down to bot is way easier to execute. Diving Janna with R is extremely difficult, but trading Jhin R in this case is more than worth it. Where a lot of Maokai players go wrong when using his ultimate is they will use the ability straight out in the open. In this clip here, we can see how the Maokai just presses R directly facing the enemies, and in this case, the enemy can react very easily. The champion in the front, in this case being the Fizz, can just soak up the root while the Volibear and the Darius just sit in behind the Fizz, who is already rooted, and they don't end up getting CC'd. Rift Herald is not even low at all here either, so the Maokai cannot even argue that he needs to rush this engage. What he should have done instead, and the more optimal way to use Maokai R, is to use it through terrain so that the enemy team has much less time to react to it. Maokai could have dipped up towards the top of the river here and used the R at more of an angle, which would have given him a much greater chance at landing the root on both Darius and Volibear as well. Here's an example of a really good R usage. Notice how instead of just walking in the middle of lane and using R, the Maokai dips slightly over to the side so he's in the fog of war and uses the R through the terrain. This in turn gives the enemy much less time to react, and as you can see, the Kai'Sa does not end up backing off until it's far too late. If Maokai had instead just used the R right in the middle of lane and vision of the Kai'Sa, she would have turned away immediately and the ultimate would never have hit her. There's a very sneaky way that you can use Poppy's ultimate that not many players think of. Using R to peel dive champs off your carries or using it to chain CC the enemy on an engaged play are the standard ways you're going to use Poppy R, but using it to clear minion waves can be extremely impactful. We weren't able to find any solo queue examples for this one, but here's the idea behind it. If the enemy team is barreling down on your base and you just need to stall the game out for your team to spawn, you can R the minion wave and prevent the enemy team from winning the game. You very rarely see Poppy players actually utilize this, but in the correct spots, it can be massive. The same concept can be applied if you're getting dove top lane at level 6. Instead of using R to knock the enemy away, you can get rid of the minion wave so that if the enemy team still wants to dive you, you'll have a very good chance at turning a 1-for-1. What really plagues inexperienced Shen players is not using their ultimate at the correct times. This is quite vague, so let's use a couple of clips to show you what we mean. Oftentimes, Shen players will hold on to their ultimate for far too long and use it as more of a last-ditch resort instead of using it before his team is in danger. In this game here, we can see the Yasuo is about to dive in on the Zed, and watch how long it takes for Shen R to come out. First of all, Shen does not even use his R on the Yasuo, but then when he does eventually use it, the fight is completely lost and Kai'Sa ends up dying anyway. The proper usage of Shen R in this situation is as soon as the Yasuo dives in on the Zed. You could even argue to wait a tad longer and use it when the Fiddle jumps in, but nevertheless, it should have come out way quicker and should have been used on the Yasuo. What a lot of players don't think of when using Shen R is that you're not only providing your team with the shield, but you being in that fight can heavily sway things in your team's favor. The longer it takes you to arrive to the fight, the less damage your team's putting out, and the more likely something like this occurs where your team just dies without you even being able to enter the fight at all. This next clip gives us a much better representation of how you should be looking to use Shen R. Rakan gets engaged onto, and almost immediately we have Shen using R. The Shen doesn't wait until Rakan drops low on health. He teleports in right away and heavily sways the fight in his team's favor. All in all, Shen R is best used more proactively than reactively. If you find yourself only using Shen R to save your teammates when they are super low on health, you're probably not being as map aware as you should and not getting the most out of the champion. Where a lot of players go wrong with Xerath R is similar to what we talked about with Caitlyn earlier on in the video. Many players think that they should just hold on to Xerath ultimate until the enemy is low enough to where they can kill with R, and in a lot of cases that is correct, but there are certain situations where you want to be using Xerath R for poke. In the mid to late game when you're looking to siege, you can use Xerath R to force the enemy away from the tower and allow your team to pressure more freely. Prior to Dragon or Baron spawning, using Xerath R on the enemy ADC when they're trying to acquire mid priority can be extremely powerful as well. If you can go into that Baron or Dragon fight 5v4 because the enemy drops so low that they have to base, it's going to give your team a much better chance of securing a key objective, and the enemy team probably won't even contest it. Vice versa, if you hold on to your R and only use it when the enemy is super low on health, the fight around that objective becomes a 5v5, and there's a much higher chance your team ends up losing the fight. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent Challenger players into ELO Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So that's going to be all for this one, guys. If there are any other ultimate abilities you think are used incorrectly very often, then let us know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.